Russell Westbrook at the age of 36 is digging his reputation out of the mud, playing his best basketball since his season in Washington. Not many people really believed Russ in Denver would be all that significant of an addition, myself included, but the guy has been playing like a borderline star lately and has breathed a new life into the Nuggets that was desperately needed. There's a lot to talk about with Russell Westbrook, so let's go ahead and do that. Hello everybody, welcome to Awesome Rusty Buckets. If you're over on YouTube, go ahead and subscribe to the channel and drop a like. Check us out over on Spotify and Apple Podcasts if you want to enjoy this as an audio-only experience. Let's talk about Russell Westbrook. So first things first, let me just spit a couple of numbers at you. Let's just get an idea of just how good Russ has been on paper. This year, as of right now, he's averaging 13 points, 5 rebounds, 6.5 assists, and 1.6 steals on 46, 33, 64 shooting splits. Those splits ultimately amount to a 54% true shooting percentage, which is like 4% below league average, but it's also one of the highest true shooting percentage averages of Russell Westbrook's career, so it's technically good for him at least. His shooting percentage at the rim is a career high. I believe this is the first time he's ever shot 70% at the basket. He also has the highest assisted shot percentage of his career, specifically his assisted two-pointers. His assisted threes are about the same as other years, but cuts are a big part of his game, and he's been getting a lot of very easy, free opportunities, a type of offense that just was not a part of what he used to do before. He's also been having a better three-point shooting season than he's had in a while. In fact, it's actually the highest three-point percentage that he has averaged since his MVP season in 2017. Now, mind you, he has shot below 30% from three almost every single year since then. What I am talking about is a 32% three-point shooter, but it is an improvement. It's maybe not going to end up mattering, but at the very least is an improvement. Most remarkably about the three-point shooting, he is shooting 48% on corner three-pointers. If that can maintain even a little bit, even if like he's a 40% catch and shoot corner three-point guy, huge difference maker in terms of how he would be guarded in the postseason. I imagine they would still allow him that shot quite a bit, but if he's actually punishing them for it, makes a huge difference in their spacing, which is ultimately the large concern with this addition, but we'll get to how Russ translates into the playoffs a little bit later. The other stats that I want to highlight is since becoming a full-time starter. Now, he started intermittently throughout different points in this season, but over the last 12 games, he has started every single one of those games, and he is averaging 15.5 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists, 2 stocks on 51, 35, 71 splits, which is a 59% true shooting percentage, which is about league average, so we're getting better efficiency there with him as a full-time starter. 35% from three, again, rather encouraging. I also want to highlight some more advanced numbers here. This is a tweet from Alex Hoops. In the nearly 1,500 possessions that Russ and Jokic have shared the floor together this season, they have a 126.9 offensive rating. I'm just gonna go check something real quick. Offensive rating. 122 for the Cleveland Cavaliers, which is currently historically the greatest offense of all time, is the offensive rating of the best offense in the league right now. 122, they're 7 points better than that. They are 112 defensive rating, which isn't great. Definitely not great, but they're kicking teams' ass on the offensive end to such a degree that they overall have a 14.5 net rating, a 109 half-court offense rating, which is huge. I know that Alex is specifically choosing to highlight half-court ratings here because he's a big proponent of the idea that your offensive and defensive ratings in the half court are ultimately what matters. They also have a 95.6% half court defensive rating. So overall in the half court, they're beating opponents by also just under 14 points in that case. And also the 3-point percentage for the Nuggets when both have been on the floor together is 41%. As I mentioned, Russ has been hitting his threes a little bit more, and Nikola Jokic is he still leading the league in 3-point percentage? He was the last time I looked at it. Man, how do you even do this? He's at 47% from three this year. He's got a higher volume than ever before. How do you just decide you're a 47% three-point shooter? It's fucking absurd. It's like, oh, you weren't already great at everything. Why has this fitted as well as it has? Why has this happened? I would say it's pretty much exclusively that Russ and Jokic are just a match made in heaven. And that goes both ways, by the way. Westbrook has made some major changes to his game, but there was a somewhat delicate balance to strike with Russ, because the problem with a player like him at the stage of his career that he is at is, if your argument is you want Russ to be Russ, let Russ be Russ and good things will happen, well, there isn't a ton of evidence that that is actually the case. And really, I think a team needed to strike this happy medium of letting Russ do Westbrook things while also recognizing his weaknesses and doing their best to utilize him in a way that negates a lot of those weaknesses. He's been a more active cutter than at any other point in his career. He has the highest assisted percentage, again, as I mentioned, of his career. A lot of easy opportunities that are supplementing some of his less efficient offense to make him overall a very, or at least a much more efficient version of him than you typically get out of Russell Westbrook. On top of that, his playmaking has added a big dynamic to this offense. Just being able to pass the ball, having him out there, you realize how limited the playmaking of the Denver Nuggets is. Jamal Murray is a cool playmaker. Aaron Gordon can make the right pass regularly, but like historically, Jokic is just kind of dominating in that playmaking category. But Russ and Jokic together, the ball is just zipping all over the court. It's going all over the place. You better be looking for the ball if you're the other three players on the court, or if you're the other four, because they're throwing passes to each other all the time too. It's been really fun to see this level of playmaking out of a duo. I gotta think, like, historically, there's probably not many instances of two playmakers on the same team playing together at the level of Russell Westbrook and Nikola Jokic. I honestly think, as much as this conversation has been steered towards like Nikola Jokic saved Russell Westbrook's career, Nikola Jokic is just a god tier teammate elevator, which he is, I think Russ has also been huge for Jokic this year. I have never seen someone so effective at setting up Jokic. You almost forget that Nikola Jokic is such a competent, not even competent, competent is such an undersell, such a fantastic play finisher, because he ends up having to create a lot of his own offense. You're obviously got a lot of your mind in his own playmaking for his teammates, but Nikola Jokic is a big man, and if you just dump it off to him at the right time, a lot of easy offense comes out of that. And we obviously saw a good amount of that with like the Jamal and Jokic pick and roll, but Jamal definitely had a shoot first ideology coming off of a screen, where Russ is like, his number one prerogative is getting Nikola Jokic the ball in the right place. Now, the weird thing about that is Jokic's numbers finishing at the rim and from floater range are actually down like anywhere from like 10 to 8% in both categories. It's not Russell Westbrook's fault at all. He's just kind of had this weird thing where he's missing bunnies regularly, but the amount of open opportunities, I'm just going on eye test here. The amount of open opportunities that I see Jokic get when I'm watching him play with Russ, it's actually mind-boggling. And it has resulted in his scoring numbers going up quite a bit. Obviously, his three-point shot is a big part of it, but he has gone from 26.4 points per game last year to 30.6. 30.6 is the first time he has averaged 30. Who knows if it will maintain throughout the year, but if it does, it'll be the first time he put up those numbers, and it will be 3.5 more points per game than his previous career high. So yeah, the efficiency around the basket is a little bit lower, but the points per game is the highest it's ever been for Jokic. They're using Jokic as an offensive, or as a scoring weapon, and not necessarily, I think there's also a little bit of not needing to lean on Jokic's playmaking as much when Russell Westbrook is there. And that's another nice thing to just take some of the pressure off of Nikola Jokic. I also want to point out Westbrook's defense has been really good. He is prone to gambling going for steals when he probably shouldn't, but that's also why he's averaging a good amount of steals. I don't think it's anything too crazy, but I also do feel like sometimes people clip Russell Westbrook making a really strong defensive play because he did a serious gamble and it worked out, but it's like there are also times where he makes that serious gamble and it just breaks down the entire defense. But overall, he is a pretty positive defender, especially on a Nuggets team that is not the best defensively. Also, it's worth mentioning in general, Denver's guys, at least on the offensive end, have been better lately. Michael Porter Jr. has been on a heater. Jamal Murray has had a lot more positive games lately rather than just disappointing ones. I was super skeptical about the Russell Westbrook addition. I really just did not think it was going to end up mattering. So much so that when I covered the Nuggets going into the year, and I think it was just a couple, maybe a week or two into the season, I was like, man, I don't like what I'm seeing from the Nuggets, and I was talking about their depth issues. I don't even think I mentioned Russell Westbrook because he was really that much of an afterthought to me in terms of him actually being impactful. Just to be completely honest, I thought the guy was done, which, just to be clear, would have been fine. That doesn't change that Russell Westbrook is one of the greatest players of all time, one of the greatest point guards of all time. You're allowed to, as a player who is known for uber athleticism, to just not be that good anymore at the age of 36. That's reasonable, but he's still persisting. He is still playing at a very high level at this age as a player who, again, has been so athleticism based throughout his entire career. For what it's worth, Westbrook is not as athletic as he was at his peak, but he's still more athletic than your average NBA player. That's for damn sure. I think the limitations to his game was just at the forefront of my mind, and the limitations are as ever present as they've ever been. As he is getting old, that burst is not quite the same. Meanwhile, the jumper's still broken, all of that. And his time as a Laker was an absolute shit show in a way that, you can point multiple different fingers, but one way or the other, it doesn't inspire confidence. His time with the Clippers was also kind of whatever. I kind of hated the James Harden trade just simply because it took the ball out of Westbrook's hands. At the same time, maybe the role he was in was one he was more adequately suited for, but I believe he averaged 20 points per game in the playoffs with the Clippers because everyone got hurt. Not this last year. Holy shit. He played bad. He averaged 6 points on 8 shots, 26, 23, 60 splits. But yeah, in the playoffs in 2023, I think Kawhi played 2 games and James Harden was out. But Russ, 23, 7 and 7. He put up big numbers at a point at the age of 34. So it was if that was something that you wanted to latch on to, I suppose you could. But I really didn't think there was just much left that he had to bring to the table. Russ also hasn't historically shown a ton of willingness to change some aspect of his game. The beauty in what's happening in Denver is how they have changed him just enough while still letting him be him. I didn't think he could be very productive in the year of 2024, 2025, but he absolutely has been. And I'm personally just really, really happy about it. Obviously, I've had a weird dynamic with Russell Westbrook covering him throughout my career of talking about basketball, but I like the guy. I overall root for most players to succeed unless they've given me a reason not to like them. I just thought it was reasonable for him to be done at this point, and it would be if that was the case, but he's still got stuff to prove, and I'm really glad the guy is going to, assuming that nothing wild happens here, not knock on wood, he's going to end his career on a positive note, at least on a team where it seems like he belongs, a team that wants him there, and it just not in an absolute shit show. Now, I will address this one last thing at the end. There's been a lot of people using this situation for some Jokic versus LeBron thing, which first of all, I think comparing 2022 LeBron to a peak Jokic is stupid. Yeah, Nikola Jokic is a more impactful teammate at his absolute peak than LeBron is at the age of 38. That said, the conversations about who who really makes their teammates better. The LeBron makes his teammates better thing has been super contentious in NBA discourse historically. I think it's a case-by-case basis, and the people who are like very adamantly on one side or the other just cherry pick whatever makes their case look better. Personally, in terms of the who elevates their teammates thing, I think Jokic elevates his teammates better than anybody ever. Anybody at their peak ever. Give me Jokic in terms of just making somebody better. I've seen a lot of discussion about like Ben Simmons possibly going to Denver this offseason because his contract is expiring. And I'm like, yeah, I could absolutely see Nikola Jokic turning Ben Simmons into like a very productive player. The overwhelming majority of Russell Westbrook's problems in LA were related to roster construction. So I think we're being silly. I think this is some revisionist history. Spacing is a thing. The Lakers were regularly out here running 3 complete non-floor spacers at the same time and expecting that to work for a guy who historically has shown time and time again that he thrives with more spacing than not. Obviously, if you take a guy who can't shoot and you pack the paint, well, he's going to have to take more jumpers and they're not going to be pretty. Like, that was just a nightmare situation. Stop trying to hold that over LeBron. It's really silly. Like, there's so many, like, there are plenty of avenues in which you can criticize LeBron. I don't think this is one of them. Last thing, how will this translate to the playoffs? How confident are we that what Westbrook is doing right now is actually going to work in a postseason setting? I do worry about his spacing alongside Aaron Gordon. Russ seems to do a lot better in lineups alongside Jokic that do not feature Aaron Gordon. I honestly don't know how it's going to go. The thing that I feel is like Gordon and Russ are both dudes who are like, yeah, we can't shoot threes, but we can make up for it by cutting. The more of those guys you have on the floor at the same time, the less that becomes true. Like, you can't have just multiple players who cut instead of shoot and that works. Like, it's not really how that works. But at the very least, he'll be able to play good spot minutes in situational lineups. Maybe he's not actually a starter in the playoffs because of the limiting factor of him and Aaron Gordon. Either way, I'm just glad it's happening. That's my overall take. I'm smiling. I like when good things happen. I'm happy for Russell Westbrook. I'm happy for the Denver Nuggets. I think this is one of the coolest stories of the NBA season. So shout out to him. Shout out to Rudy for editing this. Go check out our Patreon to get access to the Discord. And yeah, I think that's it. Bye.